Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Honest Pod with me, Ashley McAllister.
And me, Matthew Alley.
And this is the enigmatic 79th episode.
What's enigmatic?
It's a word that I made up there now.
Oh.
Just trying to think of another word. But bitch, it is 11:05 and I am tired.
I know. Same, do you know what? I've had a long day.
It's been I've done fuck all day, but I can't. Anyway, this is episode 79.
This is the number. So I've decided that every episode I'm going to, obviously I try and do it as best I can. So this is the number of pounds that Ashley has put on over quarantine. Number 79.
This is true. It is also I can't think of anything. I literally can't think of anything. I was gonna say it's the amount of wrinkles you had to tie back with tape this morning. But
As if.
we all know your skin is flawless.
Well, listen, I can't believe we're starting this already in the podcast, but we shall. So, Ed, I've always, I want people to moisturize this, that, and the other. And we started watching this show, Race Across the World, the first season, because we watched the second season recently. And my TV's so good. Like, TVs these days, right? They're very clear, right? You can see a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It fears me. I don't want to look like that. I think that's what it is. How does it not fear people that are going to have these, like, all of these things just going on? Like, wrinkles literally from their eye to below their chin. That's mad. Mad. And that's my fear. But, yeah. How's your week, Ashley?
We all get older. My week has been all right. I'm not going to say it's been a great week, but it's also, like, it's not been a bad week. And I don't know why. I think I've just hit another little slump.
Mm-hmm.
I just find it... I find mentally I've struggled this week.
I think everyone has, bitch. Whether they wanted to or not. It's a lot to take in.
Too much is happening, and I find myself spending less time on social media, just because there's so many idiots out there, posting stuff that are just so clearly narrow-minded, whether it be opinions that they don't think COVID-19 is a real thing, or they, disagreements around riots and protests, and and then also it's having a bit of a reverse effect on me as well, because I feel like at the minute nobody can do anything right, and I've read examples, and I'll say to you, I've read examples. For example, I've seen this video actually of during a protest somewhere in the States, graffiti happened on a bit of statue or something, and people had gone out and started cleaning off the BLM graffiti. Then they were three young white girls. Then this other person came up who I didn't see on camera, but started calling them racist for cleaning graffiti off a statue. And I was like, is it getting, in my head I was questioning, is it getting to, like, beyond, is that sort of microaggression hurtful in the growth? To me, there's nothing racist in cleaning graffiti. They weren't, saying anything hurtful. They were just saying you shouldn't be graffitiing.
Yeah. I 100% agree that graffiti, any sort of vandalism, isn't acceptable. I must admit. And I don't believe... It may or may not be a hate crime if someone is like, oh, they're not with Black Lives Matter and they clean it off. But regardless of the situation, it shouldn't have been there in the first place, and they should clean it off if they feel like that's what they need to do. It doesn't implicitly mean... It doesn't exactly mean that they're against it. It doesn't... In fact, it gives no reasoning to it. They may agree, they may not, but the vandalism is not cute. It is not cute at all.
I just thought it was... to me, it was the woman shouting at them that they're racist for cleaning it off. That was just... It was like... I think, going back to my earlier point, it's just like, you can't... Because after we recorded last week, we recorded on Monday, and then Blackout Tuesday came on Tuesday,
Mm.
and it leads on to a little mini topic I want to quickly talk about. But we talked about on Tuesday about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. And you mentioned that you'd read that some people had already said that it's a bad thing, and then people were saying don't use this hashtag, say this, or don't say anything, or and obviously there's like tweets and clips that get screen grabbed and circulated everywhere, and I've seen messages from black people say that white people shouldn't have a voice, let the black people speak right now, and this is our moment, versus no, we all need to grow together. And um, it's just, to me, this week has just been so much of arguing and fighting, and I've really really struggled, so I've just tried to keep offline.
Mm.
um, so that's my week. What about your week?
Honestly,
Oh,
it's
one other thing. One other
okay.
thing I did this week was I trimmed I trimmed my pubic hair, because it was getting well bushy, and my balls now look like they've been through a meat grinder because the blade was too, it just cut everything up, hacks of skin, blood.
Is that the first time
It's
you've done
it's
it?
a right. No, it's just new trimmers, and they're extra sharp, and I had the wrong setting, and it was no. I, it's like a meat grinder down there. I'll never
That's
have
oh
kids.
my god, that's actually disgusting.
It's not that bad now,
I mean,
actually.
unless you're into it, I
It's
guess.
it's it's scabbed up nicely.
Nice, nice. I mean, I would say at least you're not going to be seeing anyone anytime soon, but that would be the same if you did it in London, in out of pandemic anyway.
Yeah, it would make no difference.
Hmm.
How was your week, Matt? Sorry for interrupting last time.
No, no. You know, it's the same as well. Like, I think things are really starting to intensify in terms of the race rouse within this country, and it's quite interesting that you know, you're saying like you're finding it quite overwhelming, and then you just need to like lock off a little bit because you get the same sentiment with a lot of, I guess, a lot of black people, and I need to sort of find the balance because a lot of people have reached out to me. You get such conflicting advice as well. Some people like reach out to your, you know, people around you who are black and just offer a word of comfort or is there anything you can do. And then there's some people would be like, I'm tired of having. It's not black people's jobs to explain um, what's going on at the moment and explain what you need to do. You need to do your own research and things like that. So I'm kind of taking the view
Mm.
at the moment of like I'm engaging with white people that message me and want to make sure that people feel comfortable asking questions. And
Mm.
you know, I don't know everything at all. I'm learning. My thing at the moment is learning. I'm trying to do as much as I can in terms of trying to understand the current situation. I've realized recently more than ever, which I hold myself. I hold this certain level of shame. I will say that inside of myself, and an almost embarrassment that I guess it's gone so far. But I've never really held politics and um, world events high in my mind because I felt like it never really concerned me. Now I can definitely use my. This doesn't need to necessarily directly affect me, but I don't think it's appropriate for me, and I'm not saying everyone, I'm talking about me, to say that politics is not something important to me because it literally affects and dictates our lives. And as a black person and as a gay person, there are things that just happen that, you know, you're born into, and I think that you can either choose to not engage or engage with it. And I've realized now that it's something that I need and want to do to hopefully make the world a better place. Um, because I think it's a human rights issue,
Yeah,
right? In a lot of these
I would.
situations.
Yeah, I would say that I disagree with what you said, and that it's not just your opinion. I think it's everyone's responsibility to take an active interest, because nothing infuriates me more than somebody who moans about the way the society works, or moans about the government, and then you don't see them going down to vote, or they say, "Well, there's no point
Mm,
voting." It's like, well, that's such a bad attitude to have. And I made that joke, or I made that comment back when, um, whenever the COVID-19, like, we were all getting isolated, and it's like, well, staying at home should be easy because you didn't go out and vote in favor of the NHS whenever it was your time to have your voice. And it's examples like that where it comes back and bites you in the ass. So
mm,
I think it is important. And another good example right now is if if more people had gone out and voted in favor of a political party that was, you know, pushing more diversity with regards to who their cabinet members were, then you know you're moving down a journey of a more inclusive government. You know, we've said often on here that it, in order to in order we said it last week, in order to have like a full on sort of support, you need white people supporting the black people, you need straight people supporting the gay people. But I think in order for everyone to learn and grow together, white people need to hear a black person's voice, you know, gay people need to hear a straight person's voice, or whatever way you want to.
Mm.
We all need to be learning off each other, and if we have a government that's mixed and truly representative of the society that we live in, it will push forward a better society to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never understood like political agenda so much as I have now, because to me it's quite obvious that both in America and in here there's very much a divide and conquer situation. So media is very skewed to. I guess you watch it in TV shows, but the media is literally directed by the government, and I believe like so. The Madeleine McCann thing came out this week, right? This is a story
Yeah.
that's been going on this weekend, and all of the newspapers' headlines had covered it except for Financial Times and The Guardian. And in my mind, I'm like, that's a clear way of trying to detract from what's going on, you know. And then they're going to say that,
Look over there.
yeah, exactly. And then the protests that have been happening are going to say that this is the reason why there's going to be a spike in um, COVID-19, but it may have contributed to it, but it won't be the sole cause, because I was out last week and the week before and seeing on the news, you know, beaches, the parks are insane. I cycled up right to the park in London, and I swear to God, when I was going up at the street, you could have thought there was a street parade. The number of
Mm.
people that were out, it was busier than a regular day. I thought there was carnival or something like that. That's how busy it was.
Mm.
It was mad. So, but yeah, this week has been quite intense in terms of having just a lot of conversations with people, watching and reading things. One thing I'd like to recommend, if you haven't already, Ashley, and this is to everyone, and this is what spurred me into going to the protest today and on the Sunday, because originally I was unsure about going, and I was worried about mass groups of people meeting. I was concerned about health risks, and I was thinking about it, and I decided actually not to go based on seeing the size of people, the groups that were out. And then I watched something on Netflix called 13. Have you heard of it or seen it?
Mhm. I have heard of it. I've not watched it. No.
Oh my god! So we watched that on Saturday instead of going out. It really got me. That one got me bad, and it's about the 13th Amendment in America, and how it's skewed against black people basically, and how the system was created. It is so captivating. Apart from the fact that the story itself is incredible, it's just incredibly well made, incredibly well made.
Mm.
So I would
I've heard
100%
really good
recommend.
things. Yeah.
I'd recommend it to you actually. And then we were sitting there watching it, and um, I guess it's a bit extra in some way. And I'm not even. I know I'm not in America. I feel like I come from a certain level of privilege, for sure. But we were watching it, and towards the end, I just they were showing scenes of people in the names of people that you hear now that have been abused and things like that. And I broke down because I could literally see people. I know it sounds weird, but I'd look at the screen and I saw individuals going through these times, and it really just
Mm.
I broke down crying like in Ed's arms. I was literally bawling, and it just I don't know what it was, and I was like, I think I just really want to go to the protest tomorrow, and I understand that I'm putting myself at risk and potentially others, but it was just something that I felt quite I want to say passionate about. Then I felt it was really important to do because of something
Mm.
like that. Yeah. So the week has been tough, and I think it will continue that way because um, people are reaching out to me to help them understand what's going on as a black person, and I agree that it is tiring. I agree that it's not my responsibility in some senses, but I do want to provide an open ear. We've always been like that, you and I in general, with people. I think it's about having an open conversation. I'll always want to facilitate that and not close off. So I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that I'm trying to keep in mind.
Yeah. 100%. And it's good. This episode we have a guest on,
Whoop
and
whoop.
he'll be joining us in a little minute. And Rash. Rash is a Rash is a black police officer, and he's going to be joining us to talk through, what it's like being a black guy working in the Met Police. He's going to talk about how what it's like being a police officer in the current climate that's going on right now, and also just dropping a message of what message he wants people to take away about the police force and where the future of the police force might be going. Um, so that's interesting. But one other thing I want to just quickly talk about before we bring Rash in and talk is obviously with everything happening around the world, uh, it's announced that we talked about briefly earlier on that obviously I talk about CrossFit a lot, and something that means a lot to me has changed the way that I approach my fitness, my body, like the way I eat it. Maybe not right now because I've got a wee bit of a corn tummy growing, but it's CrossFit's quite important to me. Like one of my best mates, he owns a CrossFit gym. He introduced me to it. A lot of my friends do CrossFit. I spend a lot of time watching CrossFit documentaries, and it's just what happened. What started to happen this week was, and I'm admin in an LGBTQ CrossFit group on Facebook. A lot of people were talking about how CrossFit HQ hasn't said anything to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Um, it it became very interesting when you think about, for those who don't know, CrossFit has a heavily um, a heavy connection with military. A lot of the stuff they do is based on military training. A lot of the movements, are in honor of what they call hero movements from like the Navy SEALs and other areas of the armed forces. Um, and it just sort of given their history of like a white aggression corporation, it was it, it sort of seemed to be eerie how quiet they were, given that they have connotations with whatever area that CrossFit stems from. But it sort of really bubbled over the last few days, and there's a woman who she works over in one of the CrossFit gyms over in America, and she helped CrossFit HQ sort of be more open and show support for the LGBTQ community. I don't know to what extent she did it, but they have a very nice CrossFit rainbow T-shirt, which I could not get because you can't get it here in the UK. But they went they were showing support, and a lot of gyms do have like gay people, and it's we where there's certain groups as well, like WOD Pride, which is like I think it's in London, where a lot of people come together every month and do like gay people from different gyms come together and do like a little bit of mix and greet and do a workout together. And it is so it is like, to me it's always been very open and supporting to everyone. But like I was saying, it became obvious that HQ hadn't said anything, and then it started circulating yesterday. So Greg Glassman, who is the CrossFit CEO, um, in a response to a tweet that was about um, racism and discrimination and being a public health issue. The tweet basically said racism is a public health issue, and Greg Glassman wrote back saying it's Floyd 19, written as in COVID-19, which is a very distasteful, oh, for use of a better word, pun, trying to make a joke about it, which did not go down very well with within our within the LGBT groups I'm in, the CrossFit groups I'm in. But it started to then ripple on to a lot more of the more mainstream CrossFitters. So a lot of the world champions and a lot of the media people who work in CrossFit, they have started to tweet about it. Still, I think at a certain point, timmering around the edge of being like, um, I don't know how I feel about this, but this it doesn't represent what I think. Um, And then he then tweeted again today, this Greg Glassman guy, saying, "Your field model quarantined us, and now you're going to model a solution to racism. George Floyd's brutal murder sparks riot nationally. Quarantine alone is accompanied in every age and under all political regimes by an undercurrent of suspicion, distrust, and riots. Thanks." So, again, just being a bit of a dick, really. There's no better way to put it. He's an absolute dickhead. But what is interesting is, like I said, a lot of the um, media people who work in CrossFit. So a pair of guys who make YouTube videos and actually has made a lot of the CrossFit documentaries. They're called the Buttery Bros. They this week launched an episode where they're two white guys and it's like we need to educate ourselves. Their show isn't usually politically focused at all. It's it's a time for us to learn. So they brought in I think he's a black mayor of some town in the States, and they do a workout together, and they then talk through the importance of hearing black voices and messages of positivity around these troubling times. So that was really nice to watch today. And then just like Rich Froning, who's like one of the greatest CrossFitters, he just tweeted there as well, or put his Instagram about how he's disgusted with the responses from HQ, and it really is the stance that he's taken, and a lot of other people have taken is, there's two different things from CrossFit. CrossFit is the corporation, but CrossFit is also the community and the methodology of fitness and being in something together. And they don't go hand in hand. So as much as CrossFit HQ are heinous and saying some pretty awful stuff, we have to remember that there's a big community out there of welcoming you to your gym and feeling supportive, and they don't go hand in hand. What is interesting as well is a lot of affiliate owners have said that they will no longer be affiliating with CrossFit, which means I think every year they have to pay $3,000, which is a lot of money when you think about how many affiliates there are. There's hundreds of thousands around the world, and they're no longer going to be affiliated with CrossFit, or in thinking about the future of their affiliation. So just to me, it all sparked off today and yesterday, and I found it really interesting, the quick read, and I just wanted to say my opinion about it before we, because I talk about CrossFit a lot, and it worries me that something that I invest a lot of time in and have a lot of faith in doesn't seem to be supporting the people that need it right now.
That's going to be really interesting
Matt,
for CrossFit. Right. I think that's going to...
Yeah.
It's probably going to ruin CrossFit as you know it, to be fair. I mean...
Well, the big brand Reebok, who's always been a corporate partner of CrossFit, have announced that they are pulling out of their partnership. So I don't know, Mickey would know. I think there was talks before about the future of CrossFit and what sort of brand would go hand in hand with them. Whether it would still be Reebok or whether they'll bring in a different brand like Rogue, which is a CrossFit or like a gym brand, or Nike or somebody else. But Reebok have now said that they're it's not going to be them. So it is changing, and there's different corporations out there that do CrossFit, CrossFit style. CrossFit's just the name brand, and the sort of, it's like sellotape. It's it's sellotape is the brand of sticky tape, and we all just say sellotape rather than clear sticky tape. So that's what CrossFit is, and I think the importance is the methodology around what you do there and what they stand for, and the community, or as you like to say, I don't know if you say, some people say cult.
I sometimes say that.
Do you? Okay. I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but okay. It does stand for a lot more than what corporate HQ has said. So, but yeah, the future is, and to me, it's just uneasy because it's something that I love doing in my spare time, and I don't know how I feel about it right now. So I've lost a bit of my self identity. Deep. Anyway, sorry, Matt. That's
So today we have a wonderful guest, and here to introduce himself is Rash. Hello, Rash.
Hey, Rash.
Hello, how you doing, guys? Thank you for inviting me on. I'm
very welcome.
I'm Rashid. How's it going?
No, we're really good. I'm really good. This is one of the latest times that we've recorded, because you got little babs to put to bed, I guess.
Indeed, yes. And
this is way past my bedtime.
I know. I was like, I'll be in bed at this time. The children are going to bed at 9 o'clock, 9 p.m., you know.
Have you guys been sleeping more or less during this whole COVID thing?
I think I've got a good structure. I think I get around about 7.5 to 8 hours every night now. And it's because I don't have to get up as early to get at work. I just get up at 9 or quarter to 8 or quarter to 9 and then roll downstairs for 9. So
yeah, I'm the same really. I don't think I've been pretty good with the sleep. Minus I've not been working. I've said before that I'm on furlough, so I still set an alarm for pretty much every day just to wake up. But I seem to wake up before it anyway, so I'm up at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, which is a bit later than a normal work day. But I try not. I don't want to sleep till like 9 or 10 p.m. So like 10 a.m. Yeah.
Well, because of my kids, I've had to make sure I just get myself into bed a lot earlier, because without fail they'll be up by sort of 6:45, and if I go too hard on any Netflix box sets or anything like that, then you get a punishment in the morning. Do you know what I mean? Just little munchkins jumping on you. But it's all
How
good.
old are they?
5 and 2. 5 and 2.
Oh, 9 p.m. Hold on. I'm not a parent, and I have no aspirations at this point, considering my immaturity and lack of funds. But 9 p.m. for a 5-year-old, is that quite late? No.
So 9 p.m. going to bed. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Usually they're going to bed around 8:30, but we've had just a little celebration in the house today. So my two-year-old, who's turned 3. Actually, yeah, 3. So she's turned 3. Got very, very excited and ate too much birthday cake, and then had cake come down and all that kind of stuff. So it just made bedtime a bit more fractious, but that's all good. It's all part of the journey. The mad journey of parenthood.
It scares the life out of me.
The best part of that story was the cake.
It was for me as well. I've been waiting all weekend to get tucked into that cake. Finally. Yeah.
Was it chocolate based? Because I really don't like birthday cake. I don't like normal birthday cake. I hate icing.
Yeah.
I hate royal icing.
Oh, you're an idiot.
Oh yeah, no. Homemade chocolate cake. Beautiful. Ooh. Absolutely beautiful.
I would take cake any way you want to give it. Chocolate, carrot, vanilla, Victoria sponge, icing, no icing, jam, cream. Oh my goodness, anything and everything. Custard, ice cream.
Yeah,
Ash, that's an absolute lie.
All gluten-free, all gluten-free.
Yeah.
The trouble is with just during this COVID, I've noticed that if I'm not exercising regularly, I love my food, so I will pile it on. So I've had to be really disciplined. So today, even just with the cake, I'm thinking, right, tomorrow's got to be a decent workout. Yeah.
I hear you. I have put on so much weight, and I literally, before about an hour ago, I was planning my workouts for the week and writing them in my little diary, so I don't forget to do them.
You don't forget to post about them and not do them, do you mean?
I don't post about every single one I do.
Okay. All right.
This is not the time, Matt.
So I need to hear the podcast with Mickey. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm excited to hear what he's got to say. If he talks about any lockdown fitness.
It's really good because you take the piss out of Ash a lot, which is my favourite part, to be fair. It was a nice assault. It's the way I like to use. A good attack on Ashley's.
It was 100% an attack.
Yeah, it was. It was. And I was really... It nourished me. I put on so much weight from that one meal of destroying Ashley. So it was good.
Do you know what it was? You know what it was like, Rash? It was like, do you ever watch those David Attenborough programs when you have like the flock of hyenas around like that little baby deer that's defenseless. That's what it was.
That was you.
It was two vicious hyenas coming after Bambi. That's what it was.
Being pulled from limb to limb. It's harsh.
Yeah.
But you guys are vicious. I mean,
Shredded.
you guys have been, from what I've heard, you guys are vicious. But obviously, you love each other dearly, so it's all good.
Yeah. None of that will fly your way today. So, Rash, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and really why you're here? Because we've asked you to come on, but I think I know we've had a lot of discussions in the past, and I know that I believe, I like the way that you're a great thinker. I know you like to think and talk about things, which is wonderful. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Sure. So I'm a Londoner. I'm a black Londoner that also works in the police force. I've worked in the police force for 20 years. And I joined in 2001, the Met Police. And that was after there was a huge drive for black and minority ethnics to join the police force. And this came after the Macpherson report, which was an inquest, which was basically a sort of a very detailed report into the flawed investigation into the murder of Stephen Lawrence. So I was kind of swept up in that after university, just thinking, what do I want to do? A lot of my mates were moving into the city, never really interested me. And I always had an interest in the police, just in terms of, it was something magical about the fact that someone could commit a heinous crime like a rape or a murder, and a week, 2 weeks, a couple of months later, there'd be an announcement that this guy had been arrested. And I just thought, wow, how did they do that? I've always had that interest, and I think everyone has got a kind of interest with cop shows as well. So it was always my intention to, when I decided that I was going to join the police. I'm from a rough neighbourhood in West London, White City, which, council estates, it was rough, all of that. And, my younger brother has since told me that he got into a lot of fights because I joined the police, which he never really told me at the time because he wanted to shield me from that. But that was interesting to hear. But yeah, I was confident that I was doing the right thing despite certain issues from people in my area, which, I've been called a traitor, coconut, all this kind of stuff, which always used to confuse me because I wasn't sure who I was a traitor to. Was it to rapists and murderers and killers, and the like? So, I've always had a strong sense of self in terms of where my head's at. So joined the police, did 2 years, actually I did 18 months in uniform, which I loved. It was great, but my goal was always to be a detective, and that's where my sort of path led. So I then went on to be a trainee detective. You're dealing with minor crimes, you're dealing with fraud investigations, minor frauds, criminal damage, those sorts of things. And then you're slowly progressing as you get more experience to more violent crime, actual bodily harm, grievous bodily harm, things like that. So I did that for about 10 years. I worked in Islington, which was an amazing...
Oh, that's where I'm from, Islington. North London. That's my area. Holloway Road for life.
Oh, Holloway Road, yeah. Up and down those streets a lot. And yeah, so I wanted to get as much experience in different areas of detective work. So I was in a drugs unit, which was great fun, plain clothes, knocking down doors and doing drug raids.
Oh my days, you might have been at my house.
Excellent. I'll have to get your details after, pass them to my mates. um, yeah, it's, firearms offences, all that sort of malarkey. I've worked in what was called then the Sapphire Unit, which was basically rape investigations, which again was really interesting. So, yeah, 10 years just doing a variety of different things, robbery, burglary, specialising in different areas before I moved from there to specialise in homicide. So then I moved to what's called the Murder Squad around 2010. Spent 5 years there, just having a vast experience in terms of the types of murder investigations that were taking place, not just your inner city gang related things, investigations, but we also had some fairly high profile missing persons cases going on, which was interesting. A lot of serial rape cases because were passed on to us as well. So again, just I love that area of work. I've always been drawn to just trying to catch bad people. In that sense,
I think with police, isn't it? It's sort of like problem solving. It's the way to approach. Like if you're a good problem solver, you're going to go in and solve the problem of the crime, and that's sort of, I guess, the appeal.
yeah, absolutely. Especially around with detective work. I mean, one of the main reasons I joined the police was I just thought the array of options as a career were just so vast. If you love dogs, you could be a dog handler. If you're into sort of detective work, you can work in my area. If you want to fly helicopters, there's an area for that. If you're into antiques, there is a specialist investigation that deals with stolen antiques. Do you know what I mean? The vast.
Oh wow.
It was just so vast that I always thought it was a very interesting career to pursue, despite the issues and around race, and all of that noise of it being institutionally racist, which was the main headline to come from the Macpherson report. I just feel I've just had a great, thus far, and even to what I'm doing now. So after the Murder Squad, I went to Southwark, which is, a very impoverished area, really just a lot of social issues in that area, which translates into sort of very high crime rate of various degrees. So I went on promotion as a detective sergeant, and I just learned a lot. Just managing teams was very different to being my own sort of individual investigating things, and that just brought a different aspect to things. And then moved on to a current role where I'm working in Scotland Yard again in a sort of in a detective role. Yeah, so that's me.
Oh my God, that's a long journey. I think that's pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I was only born 18 years ago, so I can't even imagine that length of time of work. I will say that pretty much my entire life.
Yeah.
But do you know what? I've got I have a lot of questions to ask because I'm quite interested just about sort of your journey, because you said when you first started, and your brother, who I don't know what the right word is, but I think I can only say nobly kept what happened to him away from you to not, I don't know, put that pressure on you, make you feel like you need to change your vocation or anything like that. And that people called you all different names. And I assume when you say that people called you a traitor, were you saying that black people said that you're a traitor and a coconut?
Yeah, it was more that was from, so I remember distinctly when I used to live at my mum's house when I first started. I'd be walking to White City Station, and just kids in the area who, we'd all grown up at various ages. Everyone knows each other in an estate. And
For
when
sure.
word got out that I was joining the police, it was all sorts of terms. So from coconut, Jakes. Jakes is a sort of street slang for cops. Fed, all this sort of stuff. So there was a mix of racial connotation from some kids, and this was black and white. But they were, they were shouting from a distance, so it was never right in my face. It was all stuff being shouted out. Do you know what I mean? In a cowardly way. But yeah, that's it. I was just thankful that we weren't really targeted. I wasn't really targeted. Although I had conversations with people. I used to play football when I first joined as well, and I used to play football with some local mates, and one of these guys was clearly something I kind of realized later, but he was into criminal activity, and he was like, yeah, when you told me that you joined the police, I couldn't believe it, and I've had to call off some boys who wanted to do you in. Do you know what I mean? Which is, it was odd, but I never really took it to heart because nothing really happened. And I don't know, there's just a certain confidence that comes with joining the police force. You just understand how the machinery works and the level of influence that you have as a police officer, even on a street level.
I mean, I would definitely agree with that for sure. And I'm somehow really grateful or thankful that nothing had happened to you, because I think it would be a step too far for someone just by you choosing a career for yourself, that you should then be physically assaulted in any way. Like, I think that would be absolutely ridiculous. I guess it would put people in a difficult position. Maybe people treat you differently because, to an extent, I say, we all do things that we probably think maybe breaking the law. I do. I say everyone. I know that I'll do something where I'm a bit like, is this completely legal? But I don't want to also, but I also don't want to, I'd be like, shall I? Because we're getting to know each other, and I know you through rugby for sure, But I'm like, and I'm joking about like my brother and stuff, but I'd say, somewhat open about the fact that in where I grew up and my family and friends, it's always been surrounded around drugs, right? There's always been in my life, and I think it's been why I've got such an aspersion to it. Like I have a real unsettled way around drugs myself. I'm not someone who feels comfortable around them, and I think that's why. Me in the past, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable saying that to you or someone else that I would speak to, because I guess in the back of your mind you'd always think like, oh well, he's gonna then sort me out or something. Do you know what I mean? And do you think that anyone's behaved differently to you in that respect, where you think maybe it's been a blocker to you actually having relationships or getting to know people?
I know of a really good friend from university who cut me off. When he found out that I joined, he cut me off, and then regretted it. Years later, sort of came back and apologized.
Did he say why?
We talked it out, but he said, he made his feelings clear at the time when I said I joined, because we were at uni together, and there's all sorts of fun that we might have had at university, but when I left university, I was in Manchester, and when I came down to London, I think my mindset was very much, right, I need to sort my life out, and he wasn't quite on the same tip. We've got mutual friends and all this sort of stuff, but I think he felt really affronted because we were very close, and and that was it. So we didn't talk for about 4 or 5 years until later on he just he invited me to a gathering. He was moving to Australia and invited me there, and then we had a bit of a sit down and a heart to heart. And yeah, we're friends. You know, we're friends now. But I do remember that because it hurt a lot at the time.
Is he black as well?
No, no, it's a white guy.
Oh, and that surprised me, I guess, because I was going to ask, do you get a different response from white people and black people, if in your experience?
Do I get a different response? It's really hard to quantify. I think everyone, you know, being a Londoner, which is so diverse, so many diverse characters. There's a sense of there's a cultural reaction, I think. So if I go to a black barber's, I don't talk about it. It's
Oh
not
my God,
something
imagine.
or yeah,
I could not even imagine a police officer going into a black barber's talking.
yeah, just exactly. I just wouldn't do that. Just one. I think generally when I'm on the street and I'm off duty, you just got to just keep as much close to your chest as possible. And you know, I've seen in barbershops stolen property being moved around. You know, people doing various things which might be seen as shifty under a bit more investigation, but I'm there to get my hair cut and I want to leave there safely. And I'm always on duty in a sense, even when I'm off duty, but my safety always comes first so I can get back to the family. So
Absolutely.
that's an interesting one in terms of reaction. Yeah, maybe I would say broadly from more white people, if we're going to split it into if there's a racial distinction, maybe there's more intrigue in terms of what I do and the role. But you know, as time's moved on, that's definitely changed. Where you know, I'd say there's just equal interest from various groups, and yeah, I haven't really had anything negative. It's always quite interesting at dinner parties or whatever when you're just making conversation that seems to be of interest to people. So that's all good.
Before you became a policeman, say like I don't know, you grew up in London, and as a teenager or anything like that, did you have any experiences with the police up until you applied?
Yeah, good. That's a really good question. I had, and they were a mix of positive and negative. So the my main interactions were, you know, when I was younger, say between the ages of 6 and 10, 6 and 11, there was a lot of domestic violence going on in my house, so we were calling the police a lot. And God, you wouldn't even know about this, but back in those days, there were telephone boxes that you'd run outside and use. And yeah, I just remember distinctly running out with my older sister into a telephone box and calling the police, and them coming round, and just this look of yeah, just this look of wow, this is a mess. We need to clear up in terms of the police. I couldn't really comprehend what their role was in the situation, but they were just there to help keep the peace in our household. So that was my earliest interactions, and then later for me, they became an odd sense of refuge because during my teenage years, I'd gone through like a younger sister of mine had sadly, she was killed in a roadside accident, and just living in my house was pretty. It just wasn't pleasant. It wasn't particularly pleasant. So I remember I used to go to a police station, take myself to a police station sometimes after school. If I wasn't going to a mate's house and just stay there for far too long, I'd take myself to a police station and just pretend that I'd lost my way home, and just wait for a police officer to take me home. It was looking back, that was just it was a cry for help and all that sort of stuff in terms of things I was going through. But I remember that. In terms of the negative, no, I've got no stories of, aggressive stop and search and that kind of thing. I've been stopped. I hadn't got a Nigerian friend who's one of my best mates, and we were out with one of his friends who was really loaded. So he had a Porsche, and we were about 19, 20, driving around West End in this Porsche. And I remember us getting pulled over. But again, nothing happened from that. So I didn't really think, the police are victimising us or anything like that. It didn't really register in that way. So yeah, that's all I'd say around that in terms of my interactions with police.
Yeah, it's weird when you're growing up, and I guess your interaction with the police or your experience with the police, no matter who you are, could sort of guide your impression of whether you, as an adult, look at them as a role of support or a role of abuse. I've, you know, I think my earliest encounter with the police was whenever I played Resident Evil 2, and I was that Leon guy who, his first day, had to save the world from the Umbrella Corporation. But no, I grew up. Obviously, in Northern Ireland, there was a lot of contention with the police as well.
Yeah.
Very heavily Protestant. Would very heavily abuse the Catholic community. I grew up in a Catholic community, so I was sort of weird. I was very neutral between the lines because just politically we were brought up not to take sides because a lot of our family was targeted in the past and murdered in the past and the Troubles. So my grandparents kept us very much neutral and
Right.
no opinion. So to me, I never had any bad encounter with police. They're always there to kind of, come and protect us from whatever else was going around
Yeah.
and do their job. But that doesn't mean I'm not aware of the history of them turning a blind eye to Catholics and targeting Catholics, and so it is weird. Like if you ask different people here, and we spoke before in the last episode how like in Ireland it's not so much a black versus white racism, but back in when the Troubles were going, it was a very much a Protestant versus Catholic. I don't know if it's racism,
Yeah.
but segregation anyway. But so I'm sort of like, it's odd to watch what's happening now because it sort of mirrors what was happening 20, 30 years ago here in this country and what I grew up in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I guess it's nice to have you on and hear your side of things, especially I guess what's going on now. You'll have quite a unique perspective on things given your race and your job as well.
Sure. Yeah, this is it. I have to say, this week has been enlightening, tragic in a lot of respects, but I'm a hopeful person, and I'm really seeing. I don't think I've seen discussions about race made in this way ever. I'm having conversations with people, white and black, people who are in the police force and not in the police force, just about this topic, and everyone has just been extremely open, and people that I consider to be very progressive in their thinking are saying to me, Rash, what do you think we can do more of? What do we need to do? And I truly believe it's a watershed moment. I really do. I really do.
I'm really hoping that
I
it's
said
quite
that as well.
pivotal. I'm hoping that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the questions. So I want to talk about the protests because I actually went to one of the protests in London today. So there was one that started outside of the U.S. Embassy, and then there was a march towards Parliament, and then to 10 Downing Street where the Prime Minister lives.
Yeah.
And people were speaking, and I guess one of the things about the protests in the UK and in London at the moment is there isn't an absolute clear, almost, I don't want to say, well, I do want to say an absolute clear purpose for the protest itself, apart from bringing to light the issues, the systemic issues that are both there in the US and that some are recognising here. Do you have any experience in terms of, I don't know, are the police racist is the question I'm going to ask, in your opinion.
Just say it
I like
as
how
it
you
is.
nearly worded that. You nearly worded
Say it
that
as
in a
it is.
very.
I ran out of words.
So
I was reading my dictionary and I was like, so what's no, the book has now ended.
Just don't hold back. Right. Okay. You know what? I'm going to deliberate over how I explain this, just because the issue is a layered one. The answer is it's complex in a way. As we mentioned, as I mentioned, the police have been what's the word, branded with the term institutionally racist, and that was 20 years ago. And I believe that was a watershed moment for the police force, and it meant that a number of initiatives and drivers happened within the police force, in terms of just even the way, just as an example, the way murder investigations were being undertaken completely changed after that, because there was a high volume of black families who would come into contact with police around this. Their experience had always been, or the majority had been, very negative. And that was completely transformed, whereby you have something like that's now a family liaison officer, who is that conduit between an investigation and a family. I don't want to sort of, maybe I'm going off the issue by going into certain examples, but the Macpherson report was a real game changer for the police, and in terms of the way it addressed not only the black community but diversity, it really held the mirror up and said, right, we need to change. What are we going to do? We need more visible black and minority ethnic officers in, for a start. We can't have a solely white, majority white police force policing London. That's been part of the problem, and that's where I came in. 2 years after the Macpherson report, I joined the police, and I was involved in stop and search scenarios when I was in uniform and not in uniform. But my approach was, there was never a sense of just the way I approach people meant that we either both walked away safe, with a degree of respect in the interaction, or that person was being arrested because a flagrant crime had been committed. and that's whether they've, if they've got possession of knife or drugs or anything like that, then that's what happened. But I never had a negative experience, and that's the reason why. Just understanding the need for different nationalities to be brought into the police, or different backgrounds, I should say, because I consider myself Black British, English, and I have African heritage. So, yeah, that's why I say that it's a multi-layered answer. I've had racist incidents in the police.
By police officers, you're saying, towards you?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll happily explain those and explain those scenarios. But what I would say is that is a reflection of society. The police are a reflection of our society. I've had a myriad of racist incidents in society. You know what I mean? Not linked to my job at all. So, yeah, I hope that goes some way to answering your question. The fact that I've had racist incidents doesn't mean I consider the police force to be a racist organisation. I do believe that the tag of institutional racism being such a major force, a major driver in 70s, 80s, 90s was the case. And I believe that the organisation are addressing that and are making the steps to address it. But yeah, the journey still needs to be made, and they're still on that journey as a police force. So,
I was reading a thing today that there was a debate. Well, some people think that, and this is more specific in the States than the UK, but people were arguing that the police get too much funding and it's they have to have their funding cut. Whilst another approach was no, they're not getting enough funding. Um, they need to have more funding, and that money needs to be invested into like growing police officers. So it's like, is it like psychological training? Somebody was saying how they could, if they get into a scenario, train them in like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so that they don't feel compelled to always reach for a gun to handle a situation. They can use like body weight and movement to sort of like combat scenarios that are going to maybe escalate to something else.
sure.
And to me, that was it was an insightful way to look at it. I think what's coming out of the current climate around the world, and it's and what makes me like, I remember I think we chatted earlier on about how this one seems a bit different. This sort of incident, to me, it seems massively different, and I felt this for about a week or so. Just sort of the way it's growing, and obviously it's much massive, like much more massive than we would have thought. Like
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, we would never even thought the world would be protesting and rioting and looting and stuff. Like we were all still thinking we'd be trapped in some COVID coma. But I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, I thought it was an interesting perspective
Yeah.
to like grow the police in some way rather than sort of take away stuff.
Sure. No, that is interesting. There has to be just distinctions around UK police and the US police and there is a lot of conflation of issues around this because this has been sparked by an incident in the US, and suddenly we're seeing over here the Black Lives Matter movement really taking hold over here as well. So there are definite sort of links. However, in terms of the police force, the fact that they're armed, like every what we would call a bobby on the beat has a firearm, that is a fundamental difference between them and us. And I think
Well, I grew when I grew up, police here had guns.
police where?
That was police here in Northern Ireland
Oh,
always
sure,
carried guns.
sure.
It was I remember moving to England and being like, why doesn't we have guns?
Yeah,
I just find it strange that they don't have guns.
sure. And yeah, and that must create just a different urgency, I think, for a police officer. I'm not sure that I would do the job that I do if I had to carry a gun. The idea of
Yeah,
the idea that I could do a job that meant I would more than likely be put in a position whereby I have to kill someone or potentially kill someone with a firearm. It's a different job to go into, and the different considerations. We've got specialist firearms units
units.
that,
Yeah,
that deal with.
I guess a big
isolated
difference as well
incidents.
is a big difference is in the States. Everyone can have a gun,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's sort of like it's like a balance.
yeah,
And then here it wasn't so much that anyone could have a gun, but you know there were shitloads of guns about here, so
yeah,
it was again it was a protection thing. So
yeah. And your fund, the point around funding is really interesting. I would say the police need funding. Anyone who says that our funding needs to be cut just doesn't. I just don't think understands the issues that policing is going through at the moment. We're talking about police stations that are dilapidated. We're talking about equipment that's used which isn't up to date, fit for purpose. The volume of work, the volume of crime, I should say, being such that there aren't enough, cars taking out officers. I'm not even sure if I'm speaking out of turn by mentioning this sort of things, but I'm just speaking from someone who has been faced with those sort of situations. Anyone says that the police should have their funding cut really just doesn't understand the seriousness of what they're saying. And funding as well, it seems to work differently in different parts of the police. So you've got, counter-terrorism policing there are different funding channels for that area of policing, and then you've got your mainstream policing in terms of answering calls that come in via 999 and just general investigations. Again, that's a different funding channel. But
yeah, I think it's anyone who comes into contact with the public. I think would need as a large part of their job comes into contact with the public because to me the way police are training needs to change to reflect the way society's changing.
yeah,
Like I discovered this week or a couple of weeks ago that you can have a thing which is a mental health first aider, which I'd never heard of before. But you do a weekend course, which is like a qualified course, and you're then a classified mental health first aider, and all types of things like that need to sort of, I guess, to me, the police need to be trained in and knowledged in to help tackle modern day problems.
yeah, absolutely. And the modern day police officer is carrying a lot of different responsibilities and wearing different hats, as you mentioned. Mental health
Yeah,
is one issue. Being averse in communicating with young people, highly, kids who've been abused in whether it's physically or psychologically. Gosh, the amount of different areas that, yeah, just even domestic violence, understanding the issues and the nuances that go with that. That you can have a victim of severe domestic violence, who will do everything that they can to sabotage the investigation, just so because of their own inbuilt fear of the suspect. Just mind blowing. Different levels of different aspects to dealing with the public. That officers need to be skilled in.
Yeah.
What kind of so over your time, when we're talking about sort of like, you know, providing more resources for the police, has there been any sort of training or development? Because the things that you'd spoken about were mostly like, I'd say, physical things, the buildings, cars, tools that you need to use. But what kind of training is there for looking after the police's own mental health and well-being, but also things like non-biased training when it comes to gender inequality, racial inequality? Do you have anything like that you've noticed within the past, I don't know, well, at any point during your career?
Yeah, for sure. Various courses on diversity awareness, various training courses in terms of how to handle suspects or prisoners when they are handcuffed or in a vulnerable position. I have to say the police are very good around that and really picking up on any issues that occur globally. They'll take those examples and say, well, look, these officers did this and caused the death of a prisoner or a suspect. They're getting better around mental health awareness, not only of members of the public, but our own staff. That's really come to the fore, as well as the myriad of issues that staff might face in dealing with very traumatic situations, which can affect people in different ways. So yeah, I would say yes. There is a lot of training that goes into it. There's a lot of input that goes into officers. It's hard to say whether it's enough or not. There comes a point where you get the training, but your experience lies in the real life jobs that you deal with.
It's quite interesting what you're saying about sort of so when you first started, there was a push for more non-white people, black people, to join the police. Because I was in the protest today, it still stood out to me that I was looking at the police, and I would say maybe, I don't know, somewhere between sort of 1 in 10, maybe a bit less, were people of color of any kind. So we saw this like line of police going by, and in one of them, every single person I saw I perceived as white, in that situation. And then it was very, very sparse. And I don't know if that was in relation to the situation that we're currently in. Does that reflect the police? Are there like numbers, or have you seen the number of non-white people growing within the police?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have any figures. I haven't got any figures to hand. I would
No.
On a sort of visual aspect. There's definitely a sense of more ethnic minorities coming into the police, but it's widely known within the police force as well that the retention rate isn't very good. So a lot of, but that's also happening. There's a new trend that's also happening, that new joiners aren't necessarily joining for life in the way that they were 20, 30 years ago. The police used to be a job for life. Now there's that sense that it's a job for maybe 10 years, get as skilled up in it as possible, and people are moving on into the corporate world or just other areas of work. So
I have
yeah.
just some stats here. The police force this is taken from as of March 2019. 93.1% of police officers were from a white ethnic group, and 6.9% were from other ethnic groups.
And
Wow.
you just got
Wow.
that now.
That's
It's
2019.
got
And
2019. So
is that nationally or is that the
government.uk.
MPS? Is that the UK?
I'm guessing it's going from England and Wales because this website's for England and Wales.
Sure.
It's the just gov.uk. So it says at the end of March 2019, 93.1% of police officers
Wow.
were from a white ethnic group and 9.6.
Mm.
4% of senior officers were Asian, black, mixed or other.
I find, I mean, because that's why I guess I really struggle is like seeing so few when I was out today. The protests are almost exclusively almost not completely, it's targeted towards the police force. And I felt a certain level of empathy, I must admit, when the police had to walk through these crowds of people. And there were a couple of instances where the protesters, I would say the majority of it was peaceful where I was. And I know yesterday it was peaceful during the day because some of our friends who we all know were there. And then there were some troubles in the afternoon and the evening time. The police, from my experience and just what I saw, and I was going, were at no point in any way inciting anything. I don't even think they really interacted unless they were spoken to. I'd seen like a number of people having conversations with protesters around. Some looked relatively heated, some looked like conversations, which is it's great. But then they were walking through, and some people were just, you know, I would say relatively small but unnecessary, where they're just boo. Some people were actually saying like pigs. But then some people were just saying some things, and I'm like, it did make me. That is a high pressure situation, I can imagine, and it's very tense. And at no point, in this instance, the police handled it really well because so often in these protests, they're being told that they are the one inciting riots, which I'm not saying they don't. I'm definitely not saying that they don't. I think that these high pressure situations maybe. I've witnessed police coming far too hard in certain situations. And my most humiliating time, the reason why I have such a negative view of the police is because I felt like I was humiliated by the police unnecessarily, especially because I consider myself a non-criminal, despite what I said earlier. And so I felt like the police in that situation were heavy-handed, I would say. In this instance, it's not the case for every single person. It's not the case for every single police officer. But if those facts are somewhat true, then I would challenge what you're saying, Rash, about the fact that maybe it has grown or there's a better understanding because there's still not a full representation of, the white people would still hold a majority stake, and apart from being a police officer, have that guilt of, or pressure or whatever you want to call it.
Hey everyone, Ashley here. I'm just jumping in to let you know that at this point of the conversation, sadly, Rash cut out for a good 10 minutes. But he did pick it back up, and we will jump back in to the section where he joins us again. So I apologize should things seem a little bit disjointed. Thank you.
And I would say even today I felt like the police were respectful in doing their job, and that although it is their job, people will be like in any profession, should people be commended for doing their job? And I think to a certain level people should be, because it's not easy to hold or maintain a certain level of a certain standard, I would say. And today I would take it in mind that we were having a peaceful protest, in my opinion, and the police were complicit in keeping the peace, despite the fact that in a few small instances, some young people who felt the need to shout slurs at the police were almost looking to poke the bear. And the police should be trained and well enough to be able to handle certain situations, blah, blah, blah. But, this whole situation, one thing has taught me is that we need to be more open. And I want to believe that there are good people, only because I've met Rash, my housemate, people that I know that have joined the police. There are good people. I do fundamentally believe that the system that we're working in is skewed towards certain demographics, and that is what needs to change. I don't think in most cases the individuals need to change. Representation needs to be better. That's 100% like clear. As I believe that in any situation, if the majority is skewed one way, if everyone is a white male, if everyone's white, they'll have white people's interests at heart. Fundamentally, because they don't know other people's experiences, and not because of any other reason apart from not living the experience of a black person, an Asian person, whatever it is, a female, a transgender person, a gay person, and that needs to change. But I'd like to believe that the individuals that work within the system are doing the best that they can, and that what the changes that need to be made are beyond individuals. There are individuals in every situation. We've got individuals, protesters, who are literally making it worse for everybody else. They're quite literally doing that. And that's the same for the police. It's the same for my place of employment, for other people's. But I will continue to have these conversations. I would like to keep an open mind. I don't know if I'll ever get over my experience in that respect, and I don't think I should. I just don't hold it against the police that I see in front of me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that just having a dialogue, just keeping that dialogue open, that needs to happen. And yeah, there are a lot of things that the police has to change. As long as they're moving in the direction of trying to sort them out, I think is why I'm still hopeful.
I think we have to be. I honestly think we have to be, because if we're not, then there's no point in going on the protest. There's no point having these conversations. Really, I think we have to be hopeful. I think as black people, we have to be hopeful. I am thankful that the white people or people that are not black, because this is a black issue at the moment. It's not the only issue, but right in this moment, it is a black issue.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that the white people that are there are hopeful that they can help a change as well. Because if I've been having conversations, even close to me, I'm talking about family members, and we're minorities who are saying there's no point. They're just saying there's no point, and if you get to that point, it just doesn't. I'm like, well, we may as well just give up on everything,
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that's it.
I agree. I agree with that sentiment. I'm really hopeful. Just the level of understanding and detail that I've seen this week from mates, and just even the notion that they really do want to find out a bit more. I want to find out more about why we're in this particular place. So I think if everyone's thinking like that, it can only be a good thing. What a crazy year, this 2020. The COVID pandemic has made everyone think differently about their lives, and this has now come along, and again has just added another layer to that in terms of how we live as a society. I think it could be a pivotal year in like the human race's future, but we'll see.
Absolutely. Rash, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for letting me just say my side of things. It's really helpful to me as well, just voicing this stuff. It's great.
I would say, we've had loads of conversations before, and I think we'll have more, but it just shows one thing I admire about you is your actual strength of character. You have that strong sense of self, like you said at the beginning, but are still able to open up and talk to people, because I have and will openly challenge you. Your friend who decided to cut you off, to still be able to go back to that, not many people will be able to do that and be so willing and open and accepting. And I think that you set a great example for any human being to, build human interactions and facilitate that. So I thank you a lot, and I do really look forward to having more conversations. I will say that.
Great. No, and I feel the same about you guys in terms of, you know, when I started listening to you, I just thought your honesty and authenticity that comes through on the show every week, whether you're talking about something serious or something more light-hearted, I just love the realness about it, and that's why I was keen to come on and you know, have a conversation with you, and obviously I'd picked up on your earlier slagging off of the police in for some previous podcasts, so I'm glad we got a chance to sit down and break bread.
Yeah, absolutely. We did give you a hard time.
Not we.
Well, Ashley's only had positive experience with the police, isn't it? They've always been like, "Hello, sir. How may I shine your shoes?"
And I've always tipped my hat right back at them, man.
No. Yeah.
Ashley's
All right,
a
then.
good boy.
Listen, I'm a good boy. I was a perfectly good boy. Oh my goodness! Listen, I'll tell you what happened afterwards, and you'll be like, "Wow." It's not my fault, I promise you.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Rash, thank you very much for coming on and talking about your experience. Hopefully it wasn't as scary as you made out before we hit that record button.
No, thanks guys. You made me feel very comfortable. And yeah, no, I hope it works when we listen back.
Yes.
I'm sure it'll be brilliant.
Nice
Stay
one.
safe, Rash.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Cool.
Yes.
Take care.
All right. Bye,
All
bye,
right,
Ashley.
Thank you. Bye, Matt. Thank you for another good episode.
Yes, I should have a good sleep tonight. I just had a bath after my long day of protesting, so I'm looking forward to it.
And thank you, lovely listeners, for another week.
Yay.
All right, bye, everyone.